Well, welcome back, everyone. And we are now here to present to you our last panel for the day, who will be discussing where the community management is headed outside of the UAE. Now, before we start off on the discussion, let me quickly introduce the panel to you. We have here with us today Mr. Babul Akhtar, the Senior Manager in Community Management at the Al Mauj Muscat, Oman. And we also have with us Mr. Johan Kruger, the CEO and Association Management Solutions from South Africa. And also joining us quite early in the morning is Mr. John Hammersmith, the CEO of Hammersmith from the US. And as you can also see, Mr. Ismail Hosni, the Senior Director of Community and Facility Management Team from IGI Real Estate. And the panel will be moderated by Mr. Gary Murray, the Managing Director and Head of Owners Association Management of CORE. So viewers, please note that the Q&A will be held in the last 10 minutes of the discussion. However, we do encourage you to post in your questions during the course of the discussion. And of course, we do have a networking lounge where you can take the discussion out there post the session. So over to you, Mr. Guy.
Thanks, Mega. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We've got the interesting one today because we get to hear people's voices from outside of the UAE, which is quite good. We've got Egypt represented, we've got America, we've got South Africa, and we've obviously got Oman and Muscat. So our topic today is where is community management headed outside of the UAE, and what I think we're meaning for that is we're wanting to talk and just share stories and have a few points of discussion over how we all manage our communities in our different countries and our different areas. And I'll just jump right into it. Obviously, we've been part of COVID, we've been part of this pandemic, and I was wondering what kind of impact has the pandemic had on you guys across the borders. Obviously, we know how it affected us in UAE. From your company standpoint and also from your client standpoints with your communities, because you had to manage your staff, you had to manage your own company. But as community managers, obviously we look after everybody else's homes and offices. So I'd imagine that impact was quite dramatic. So I'd like to go to John to start with, if possible, because America interests me. So if we can start with John and see get your opinion on that.
Of course. Thanks, Gary. I think the number one impact that we've had is that it's really forced us into technology that some people may have been uncomfortable with in the past, both our employees, our managers, as well as our clients and board members. I've always believed and still do that ours is a relationship business. And it's really about trying to find new ways to nurture those relationships with our clients and with our staff as well. Not being able to be face-to-face in person as much. I think that some of the board members that we have that maybe weren't quite as used to technology or didn't embrace the technology have really been forced to, since we can't meet in person. And I think it's going to be one of the lasting effects as well, that people now see the benefits of being able to do this virtually. For our community managers, it's certainly a lot easier for them time-wise. They don't have to travel to and from the properties for the board meetings. But I think the biggest impact really has been, how do we deal with the relationships? How do we nurture our relationships with our clients and our employees while having to do so virtually?
Yeah, and that's something I think we've all faced a little bit, but I think there's, like, as far as I'm aware, as far as we've always been taught, the sort of regulation and the legislation in America means you need to be very specific over how you meet, how you distribute meetings, how you make decisions, because it's quite a litigious environment. So it must have been interesting to try and move so quickly in those areas, you know?
Yeah, it really was. We found out actually on a Friday afternoon in March that we weren't going to be able to be meeting in person anymore. And I had to send my staff home. So we had a weekend to be able to figure out how do we get everyone connected remotely when we were used to all being in offices. And with over 200 employees, that certainly was a challenge, but we were in a position to be able to deal with it. Each state in the U.S. has different laws. There's a lot of them that don't allow anything other than in-person meetings. So we've had to go to the attorneys and talk with them and find other ways, since the current laws don't allow us to meet together. So it's been different impacts in different parts of the U.S. We were talking earlier that you go to some places in the U.S. and they're just not paying attention to the pandemic at all. No one's wearing masks. People are gathering in large
hence why
groups.
I came to you first, John.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go to other places where people are quite diligent and they're really spending their, taking it seriously. So I haven't seen any lawsuits yet, but I'm sure that there are some to come, because as you said, it's a very litigious society that we live in.
What about yourself, Johan? Because I know, and sorry to the two guys from this region, but my understanding of South Africa as well is that it's a pretty similar sort of mindset. It's quite of a controlled, and I might be wrong, but yeah. So how did it affect you?
Yeah, so thank you, Gary, and thank you for the opportunity. We went into a hard lockdown in March, level 5, and literally nobody was allowed to move unless you're essential service. So the same as that happened with John overnight. We had to make plans, especially around a service like security. To bring those security guards in to the estates was quite a logistical nightmare for some companies.
And I think it's good to point. I've spoken to a lot of South Africans as well. I think your security could be armed as well, potentially. So it's not like security guards here where we've just got security guards in the building. This is actual security.
Yes, Gary, and you make a good point there. I mean, we for instance, the current community that I'm at, I mean, there's 3 access gates. There are guards who carry arms. We've got guards patrolling at night. We've got dogs patrolling. So it's a very secure environment in the sense, but you had to bring the manpower in. So it was tough, the logistics. And we went in a very hard lockdown for about a month. We're only allowed to exercise, or not even allowed to go outside, then later on allowed to exercise. So from our point of view is to move the staff around, to get from home to the estate or to the community was quite a challenge. But where we are today, I mean, we still wear masks, or we should wear masks, but it's a far more relaxed environment today in South Africa than it was in April and May. So the impact differed from estate or from community to community. In the community that I'm at the moment, the construction was also stopped. So that had an impact, no revenue and that what goes with that. But it was tough in those first 2 months. And then I could travel. I from where I stay to the community because I had to come in. But just, people were not allowed outside their houses. So where do you go?
It's a really strict lockdown, I think, wasn't it? Really strict.
Hard, very, very strict. But it's better now, I must say. But the first 2 months, it was tough. It was very tough. Thank you.
Ishmael, I'm sorry, Babel, I'm going to leave you to last because, well, I know you, so I'm going to speak to the other guys first. Ishmael, I imagine you're in Egypt and just you've got a vast population, different challenges, different things. Huge outbreak. How did you get on? What did you find?
Well, in Egypt, it was a little bit different compared maybe to other countries in the region or other countries in the world. We nearly had zero conformance to the measures and the precautions which should be done, and no one knows scientifically we should have 100% lockdown, and scientifically we should have huge numbers of patients, but the real figures, they're too low. No one understands why this took place. Of course, at the beginning there were some curfews, there were some restrictions, people, especially the well-educated ones and the intellectual people, they were complying with the rules and the restrictions. But after 2, 3 months, everything eased up, and we returned to normal. And currently, we returned to normal. Currently, I'm talking to you from a coffee shop. Nearly no one is wearing a mask. And at the beginning, we had a huge fall in construction activities, huge cost cuts concerning facilities management, but things picked up. Sales concerning real estate. There's a huge surge now, especially with the fall in interest rates. People here in Egypt, they love real estate and they love investing in real estate. So, accordingly, facilities management and community management, uh, they didn't face huge cost cuts at the end of it by the end of this year. Um, uh, People, and this was surprising for all of us, that they were able to use the new technologies, and even exams and education were all via the internet, and it was 100% success. No one was expecting such success rate. But to tell you the truth, it's really alarming, the way people are dealing with the pandemic. People are taking it very lightly. But till now, thank goodness, it's still safe. The figures are not that high. We have daily 200 uh, maximum patients, new patients. So no one knows why this took place, but I think with the vaccines, and if there's any medication which would be available in the coming months, I think we would return to normal, especially that we are nearly returning to normal.
It's
No,
interesting because you're such a large population.
yeah, over
Um,
over 100 million.
yeah, it's a very large population to be having 200 cases.
Yeah, and we're densely
Um,
populated. We're living on 7% of Egypt's area.
wow.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ishmael. But Babu, now obviously I know you're in Muscat. So how we kind of like obviously we UAE, Oman, and you've been linked to companies here in UAE. How did you fare? What did you see happened over there?
Yeah, I mean, look at this, Gary. It's had a profound impact on lots and lots of people, companies, similar to UAE and to the GCC region. We've had the Supreme Committee giving out directions for the whole of the country. And as I said, it's been profound. I suppose two phrases have jumped out for me in 2020 in terms of, can you see my screen? And you're, and I think in terms of everyone's just been an expert on Zoom and on Microsoft Teams, and we've taken things virtually, we've had to. In terms from Al point of view, sorry, Gary, you wanted to come in?
No, I was just thinking out loud because obviously everybody had to adapt very quickly, and I was just wondering, it's amazing how not only did the companies have to adjust so quick, but the people at home had to adjust so quick to get online to see people and, like you said, become. I was laughing at sharing my screen. That's what it was. Yeah. So it's amazing how quickly people can adapt. To be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we activated our crisis committee to deal with this. And also we had a specialist crisis communications team to be able to deal with the community response, making sure community notices, signage around the community, and a few other messages that we wanted to get across was understood by all the residents, the visitors, the retailers, and all the stakeholders. And obviously looking at our internal things like sign-offs and going into a digital platform with Adobe Acrobats and so on, so we can get digital signatures on memos and approvals. So those are some of the practical stuff. But I suppose the biggest thing for me, Gary, has been about keeping up the community spirit. In a large master community, we have about 6,000 residents here at Al Mood. I mean, there's a golf course, there's a marina, we've got a couple of hotels, we've got retail, and expat population mixed up with GCC and so on. So we've got a huge diversity. And just, I think the challenge has been just to be able to keep up the community spirit and the cohesiveness, and coming up with activities and things to be able to, for them to be able to do when you can't meet virtually. So it's one of those things, as a master developer, we organize lots and lots of events. Luckily, we managed to get our biggest event, which is the Muscat Marathon, done in February, just a month beforehand, you know. And it's taking some of those key events online, virtually.
So that I'll just segue into then go on to the next question. How did you get your feedback from the community? What was the feedback from your actions that you took? Because, and I'm going to come around to all of you for that, because like John was saying earlier, he had issues to go to attorneys because he needs to go through laws. Johan's got armed guards and dogs and try to get it out of sight, and it's just all over the place. So what was the feedback like from the community?
Yeah, so we've got a voice of the customer team, and we send out surveys, feedbacks, surveys to our residents, and that goes out every quarter. And also there's our residents are able to give us feedback after a telephone call. So there's a variety of ways that we capture feedback. That's through our official channels. And then we have some of the unofficial channels in terms of the social media, Facebook groups and so on. So we monitor them closely to see what's the temperature like in the community. We look at the feedback, and we've designed, as a result of COVID, we've designed a few initiatives. So one of the ones is something which is we called Helping Hands, and we recruited volunteers from the community to be able to help people who are vulnerable because of old age, because of pregnancy, because of ill health, to be able to do their shopping, pick up medicine, or simply if they're just feeling isolated, that they can speak to someone. And we recruited about 16 volunteers from the community who are able to go out and do the shopping and things like that. And we've seen that replicated in various parts of the country, various parts of the world. And we've just replicated that, and we've had a tremendous response from our community members who just said, listen, I really want to be able to help. How can I help?
Excellent.
We're just trying to harness some of that energy to try and get this project up and running. And as I say, the response has been tremendous from our community members.
Excellent. John, what about yourself? Because America fascinates me, right? So, yeah, talk me through it. What came back from the communities? Because you were going through COVID crises, elections, all sorts of stuff going on, and it just, so what was coming back to you? Because ultimately we all need to do, like over here, people were helping each other. That's what we were trying to do. Ultimately, the humanity came out in everybody, and that's effectively what community management is. We were making sure people were as safe as possible and helping as much as we all could. So what about yourselves over there?
You know, I saw the same thing. I think that in times of need and desperation, that the best part of people usually comes out, not always, but pretty much across the board for us, we saw people wanting to help, people wanting to figure out new ways to be able to engage the community. As Babu was talking about it, I think that community events are extremely important. One of the things that happens to us in the US quite a bit, and I'm not sure how much, probably similar to all of you as well, is that we get bombarded with surveys. You know, every telephone call I make into American Express or any other company, it's want to fill out a survey. And so we've tried to be respectful of that. and we've really taken it more just in the number of phone calls that we're getting. We deal with a lot of portfolio. So we have a number of on-site communities, but we have managers that manage 6 or 7 or even 8 in some cases communities. And trying to pull those people together. We have a lifestyle services department that does community events. We used to do everything from wine tasting to movies under the stars to Easter egg hunts to 4th of July parades, just all those types of things. So we've tried to find ways that we can do those same things, but socially distance and keep people safe. So movie night under the stars is still a great way to go. We can not have as many people, but we have a big blow up screen that we use for the summertime, which has worked out extremely well. But mostly we've been just gauging it based on the telephone calls that we get and the emails that we receive from people and our client satisfaction. And for us, the number one way to determine client satisfaction is whether we retain the contracts. And we haven't lost a contract during COVID, which in the US, communities change quite a bit. And so at first I was thinking, all right, well, nobody's going to be losing any contracts. But during that same period of time, we've grown by over 15%.
That was actually funny you should say. That was actually one of the things I was going to throw out towards the end. Like, it just, from my personal opinion, UAE, a lot of things went quiet. We locked down, we stayed in, and we were concentrating on day to day. And I was going to throw it out to you guys later on, but since you brought it up, did you see new business, old business? I feel as if a lot of that get stopped, to be honest. Nobody was making any decisions, so it's quite interesting to hear that you potentially grew 15%.
Yeah, 15% over just the 6-month period of time, and some of that was that we weren't losing any clients, but we were just gaining new clients. And
excellent. You get any jobs, John?
Yes, I do, and I know how much it fascinates you in the US. So come on over. Got a place for you.
I don't know if it fascinates me that much. What about Johan Ishmael? What about yourselves? What did you get anything different from your communities or any different experiences to what the guys had?
No, not really. I think for that you need to see the South African market in context. You know, there's not many management companies around, so most of the guys are on site employed by the community. But what we did see is that the community managers started, although they are reaching out more to each other to find support, to find you do it, you know. So I think it was a unbelievable period for networking. So instead of spending an hour in the car to go to a meeting for an hour and an hour back, the Teams and Zoom meetings made it so easy that the guys connected in small groups in areas. You know, the community that I'm at the moment, for instance, got a golf course, one of the health clubs in you know. So even in that fraternity, the golf fraternity, the guys reached out to each other, help each other, looking for support. What I did see is that we didn't make any decisions on service providers. We almost like deferred it for later. We didn't do any general meetings. Some of the guys tried it virtually, it worked, some not that great. But now suddenly that the restrictions have been lifted, now suddenly in November, which was normally a quiet month, you get one AGM after the AGM because it's been deferred from August to November.
Yeah. So you're playing catch up on it.
Yes. But the service providers, not necessarily management companies, because they're not that big in South Africa. But I could see with security and landscaping and those things, we negotiated for a reduced price, but didn't really go to market. But it starts now again. Thank you.
Excellent. Ishmael, just moving on to the next question, because this interests me, because I think like sort of South Africa and America, theirs is about the industry's been going a bit longer than maybe what it has between UAE and Oman. But in Egypt, how's community management perceived in the region? Do the local population understand it? Do they appreciate it? Is it new? If you could just give us a little insight into community management in Egypt and how it's perceived.
Well, to tell you the truth, Community management is it's behind compared to neighboring countries such as UAE or the GCC countries. Um, the real concept of community management was known with the influx of multinational real estate developers like Amar, Damak, Qatar Diyar, Futain, and so on. Um, I had the opportunity to work for such developers, and that's why I knew how business is done. But in Egypt, the perception is that community management people, they're just some employees who are meeting clients, receiving phone calls, but they lack talent, knowledge, experience, and so on. Um, the real concept of community management is not known for most people. It's You will find the community management departments or teams at the big developers, like the ones I told you about.
Yeah.
But for if you ask anyone what's community management, they won't know it. They won't know what they do. And Egypt is still behind. Um,
So is it
we
very
took the
much that
know-how.
like sorry, Ishmael, is it very much like the facility management operate the building still, basically?
Yeah, well, in facility management, we have maybe because I'm working in the Department of Facility Management and Community Management. I'm responsible for both. Uh, I have an engineering background, so I have the facility management arm. Yeah, we have so many experienced people and so many people who worked or lived abroad and returned to Egypt. So in facility management, we are okay. But concerning community management, the concept isn't still clear. Uh, no one knows what should be done. Only the multinationals, the big developers, and to tell you the truth, if you see the heads of community management in at the big real estate developers, the Egyptian ones, they're all ex-Amar or Futaim or Qatar Diyar. So who taught us what is community management is Amar. Amar,
Yeah.
the Egyptian arm of Amar. They're the ones, they're the real pioneers in Egypt. Before them, I don't think any developer had
Like
any idea.
concept, no?
No. The concept or the know-how, they lacked it. It's only maintenance and operation and maintenance, and that's it. Some customer service, but a community manager who's the focal point, who sets the regulations, who's following up on the requests, complaints, suggestions of the clients, or
Mm-hmm.
overlooking what's going on by the technical team, the property management or asset management. We're behind in such fields, and that's why we always depend on the multinationals such as JLL or Colliers or so on
Yeah.
when we want to carry out proper asset management or property management. In facility management, concerning operation and maintenance, whether it's MEP, civil works, or landscape security, and so on, we have the calibers. We have abundance
Yeah.
in calibers. In community management, we have a real shortage in calibers, and the perception and the mentality. Even the top management at many big companies, especially the local ones, they don't believe in the need for such department. Yeah,
Interesting.
really interesting.
But thanks, Ishmael. But Babu, what's so you've got a really nice development down there, and obviously with the developer that's built elsewhere. But what do people understand it there? You said that you've got a sort of expat community as well, mixed with the locals. So I'm presuming there is an understanding from the area.
Yes, Gary, open invitation to all my colleagues to come in and have a tour at Al Mouj in Muscat. Have you been, Gary, yet?
I've not. No, I'm waiting for you to pay for my ticket so I can come.
More than welcome. More than welcome. Dinner, coffee.
Just put it on the budget. Just put it in the service charge budget. It's fine. Right.
Exactly. So you're all more than welcome. So as I say, it's a lovely community with a signature golf course and the marina and so on. So and plus it's 10 minutes from the new airport as well. Look at it this way, I mean, community management, it's still in its infancy here. Whereas in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, you've got freehold areas where expats can buy property. Here, it's we call them integrated tourist complexes, and there are only 3 or 4 within Muscat, within the greater region. So it's fairly new, and it's typically the developer who runs the community management function. So it's it's a master developer role, similar to some of the big names that you have over in other countries. So again, very much in its infancy. It's one of those things that we need to be able to explain what community management is, what service charges people need to pay, what are the key items. And one of the biggest queries, one of the big ticket queries that we've had in the last few months is our owners are expecting a reduction in the service charges. From a point of view that the swimming pools, the gyms, the parks, they've been closed, maybe some of the lighting, they've been switched off, and then they're expecting this huge saving. So we've got an ongoing education program to say, actually, you know what, even though that they may be, out of bounds, but hey, maintenance is still happening. We're still.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's the same conversations everybody will be having.
Yeah.
And for every dirham or dollar that you save somewhere, you'll be spending it on sanitizer and special cleaning and printing notices. I mean, I think there must have been companies set up here just to print stickers for the floor. They must have made their fortune in the last the 6 months. The 2 meter social distancing guys.
I mean, we're in the wrong trade.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
But it makes me laugh, right? We're all facing the same things. They call it different laws, different regulations. It doesn't matter. It's all the same things. It doesn't matter which nationality, which country you're in. There's a little flavour on top of it, but it's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff. It's fun doing that. What's the this is a good topic. The regulator, did you get any assistance from any regulators? I mean, I don't know what the regulations are like in all the other countries, but I know here that everybody knows that RERA are very tightly controlling the community management industry in Dubai, especially. And the law of escrow accounts, banks, budget, releasing money, signing off contractors, etc., is all basically going through the regulator, which meant that during this time, challenge, because you're adding another layer of decision making, basically at that stage. But what about you guys? I'm just going to throw that out there. Did you need or get, or do you require any regulatory advice? Or
I'll be happy to start with that one. We didn't receive any help on a local or regional or state level. We did from the federal government, however. There's a payroll protection program that was designed to be able to make sure that people continued to work. So we were able to get payroll assistance, so we didn't have to lay anyone off, which was great. We're also considered in the US to be an essential business. So we had a little bit more leeway with making sure that people still had jobs. I think that was probably the biggest thing. And it was a low interest loan. And if you use it for the appropriate purposes, you can actually have the entire loan forgiven. So it was equivalent, I believe, to 24 weeks of payroll, which is significant.
I think just following up on that point, and sorry to interrupt, but I don't think it can be underestimated the sort of mental impact this had, not only on people in your community, but your managers, your staff, I mean, we're all human and we're trying to look after other humans. That's basically our job. Our job's to look after other human beings. They're struggling, they're stressed, which means they lash out, they're worrying about money, job security, etc., etc. We are as well. Everybody here was the same way. Nobody had an idea of what was doing. And I think that was more when I asked the first question as well. There was a real human element to what we had to do. And it's great to hear that there was support there from the US government and making payments to people. What about in South Africa, Johan? Did you get any support or require anything there?
Yeah, so we also had the payroll assistance, what we call TERS. So you know, you could claim from the unemployment fund. The regulators didn't play that big role. I think it was more on support. So to give you an example, the communities were expected to enforce rules, but it wasn't our rules to enforce. It was the police that had enforced the national government's rules. So the regulator came out quite strongly to say, don't fight with your community managers. They're just doing their work, or they'll refer it to the South African Police Service. So in that sense, it helped. The governing bodies, and I refer a little bit back to golf, they played a major role in engaging with government to get, you know, some of the sports going sooner than later, because everybody was missing out. But the human side was massive, Gary. I mean, I can just bring it back to my own personal circumstances. Suddenly you're a family of 5 that's forced into a house for 6 weeks. You know, nobody's allowed to go outside. And I've got young kids from 14 who's a sports nut who got a bit of ADHD. So to confine him into a area,
Wow,
it was tough. The middle one, easier, because he's a Fortnite player. You know, he could play.
So he was
Fortnite.
happy. That was the best thing that ever happened.
He was the happiest of us all, because he could play Fortnite. The only fight was to limit it. And then there was a little girl of 8. You know, what does she do? And mom is a physio. She can't do her work. So just the own family dynamics was amazing in my world. So I can imagine what it must have been like for other people who in smaller apartments who couldn't go out, bigger or. But I think that you're right, that human side of people reaching out to each other, people that I haven't spoken to in a while, you know, a quick Zoom meeting or WhatsApp call here and there. What I also found was quite interesting. Suddenly, university, I was in the armed forces for a while, and committees at university. Suddenly they started with a Facebook group. So suddenly you start to connect with school friends and varsity friends and, you know, all sorts of friends that you haven't seen in 20 years because they all had time. But
that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And it's continuing. That's the nice thing. So it's not just for a period, you know, for a limited period, but it wasn't easy, I must say, in those first.
I think from my experience, the first 2 weeks I enjoyed.
Yes.
After that, it was sort of a bit, because I'm quite energetic and need to be doing stuff, and it was killing me for a while. But I think that's one big thing I'm fascinated with, is how it affects people's psyche and people's mentality. Because our job, we're psychologists. That's what we are. Maybe not by trade, but we're having to get people to. We're having to get maybe thousands of people. You've got 6,000 people, Babu, and that 6,000 units. Never mind people. You've maybe got 20,000 people there that you're trying to make understand what's going on when you don't actually understand it yourself. It's crazy. And sorry, you go.
Sorry, just and suddenly your board members that gives lead in the community, they're under pressure in their private lives. They're under pressure at their work. Some of them have lost their jobs, or you know, so it was a very different dynamic, and still continues till today. You know, the relationship between management, residents, directors, and service providers.
What about yourselves, Babil, Ishmael? Did you see? Did you see any of that happening with your staff or your communities? Because pressure's pressure, you know, and stress is not healthy.
No, absolutely, Gary. I mean, look at it this way. I mean, it can boil over when you confine people, especially in apartment buildings, and there is a curfew. They can't go out. You know, it's a pressurizing environment. And as I said, the community cohesion has been a big factor for us here at Talbush, Muscat, and we've had campaigns from resident-led. So in terms of people taking photographs with their coffee cups in the balconies and sharing that on social media, things like that, small but meaningful, and people joining in and sharing their coffee cups and get your mugs out campaign. So small things.
Sorry, Babel, I've just been given the warning sign that I need to get the questions in from it because we've been talking for too long. Sorry, I'm going to need to interrupt. The last question we had, and I'm not going to ask anybody because we've kind of answered it anyway, was there dramatic changes in standard operations and our operational practices? I think it was very clear. We had to pivot very quickly to make sure we can do everything we needed to do remotely. I think that was common amongst everybody. And I think everybody that's on this call is probably aware of that. So I'm going to throw out some of the questions that we've got coming in. Let me just have a quick read. There's a good one. Did community management staff had to undergo pay cuts in other part of the world during COVID? I think America and South Africa have said, well, even if they did, they were covered under government anyway, for the most part. What about Egypt, Ishmael? Did you guys have to cut salaries?
Well, not as drastic. In the measures weren't as drastic as in the US or in Europe because we didn't have 100% lockdown. The government was focusing on the economic side more than the medical side. They were focusing that they don't want layoffs. The government were spreading awareness, but at the same time, they were sending a message to employers that we don't want layoffs. The government, to tell you the
Excellent.
truth, offered financial aid. They offered support to the needy people. And we have some subsidies still there in Egypt. Yeah, some products are subsidized for the needy people. So they offered financial support, but at the same time, they couldn't carry out 100% lockdown, although there were red flags, many red flags that there is danger, but they couldn't do so because of the financial or the economic side. So no, we didn't have massive cuts or salary cuts. Some had 50%, some had 30%, some 20. There were layoffs, of course. Exporting was affected, but it wasn't as catastrophic as in other places such as the US.
Cool. This is a good question. Now, I've got my own opinion on this, which I'll try not to enforce on everybody. But anyway, as rental income is decreasing, owners are demanding to reduce the service charge. How is it possible without compromising the quality of services? Anybody fancy that one?
Well, look at it this way. I mean, Gary, we're currently doing a community service charge budget for the whole master community. It's something that I'm working on with my team, and it's very, very difficult, extremely difficult in terms of looking at our owners are saying about their ROI and the overall market that we have absolutely no control over. And then we have that delicate balance in terms of, reducing the charges. What is basically salami slicing? What are the services that you need to be able to reduce? Is it about waste collection? Is it about the number of cleaning? What is it that you can do to be able to reduce some of the big ticket items? And the big ticket item for us, and as for I suppose in a lot of the communities, is utilities, it's the cooling, it's the electricity. So those are the things that we're focusing on. In terms of services, people expect when they're living in a community, whether it's Al Mouj, whether it's an Imar community or any of the master communities, there's a certain expectation. And when people rent a property or buy a property, you need to be able to maintain the standards and the brand. So that's a key factor for us, but it's a very difficult one, Gary.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, like just my 2 cents before I throw it out to America and South Africa is, I don't think it's related. It's not related. What you can rent your property for is the asset's the asset. You need to maintain it. I understand everybody's trying to get a return or everybody's trying to get a higher rate, but if you have 100 light bulbs, you've got 100 light bulbs. It's not related to whether your one bedroom is rented for 10 or 15. It's not really relevant. I think if all of us aren't being as cost effective as we can in our budgeting and as transparent as we are in costings, and we're not doing our job right anyway. I've been doing this a long time out here, and whenever I have these conversations with owners about reducing service charges, do you not think we would have done that over the last 10 years, dealing with boards and the intention is there. For the most part, there's obviously cases where certain people don't do that, but for the most part, I believe we all try to do this as much as possible. But I'm presuming this is a very similar conversation in America and South Africa.
Yeah, in the U.S., we don't. At least my company doesn't deal with the rentals, but I think it's the same issue with the assessments for the communities. I think that there's always a pressure to try and keep the assessments or service charges as low as you possibly can. And I think that communication with the community and the residents is paramount. I think it's the most important thing. People need to understand that if they're not going to spend the money to maintain the property, for example, there was a commercial on US TV way back, Texaco, and car mechanic said, "You can pay me now or you can pay me later." And when you have to pay them later, it's always more expensive. So I think it's really about communicating with everyone about, here's what, like you said, it's 100 light bulbs is 100 light bulbs. Maybe there's a way that we can find a different light bulb that doesn't require to be changed as often, or that will last a lot longer, reduced energy costs. But those are things that we're looking at prior to the pandemic as well. So I think that everyone is more sensitive now probably to raising assessments and service charges, but in order to maintain the property, which is really the board's responsibility and the manager's responsibility, we just have to communicate to them that this is what it's going to cost to run the community.
Yep, agreed. Ishmael, I've got a good question for you, very specifically for you. What is the growth potential in Egypt for community management? I think somebody's got their eyes on the prize.
Well, does he have a job for me?
I think he's hoping you've got plenty of jobs for him. I think that's what it is.
Well, the potential is huge for real estate development and for facility management or community management. Egypt, the demand is huge in all categories, in all segments of the market. Our birth rate is catastrophic. We increase by nearly 2 million people a year. So
do you have nothing on the TV there? Do you not have Netflix over there, or what? Or...
No. We don't watch. So we do it.
Well, you should. That's what's going to slow it down. That's what's slow it down. Increase the Netflix, reduce the population. That's what it is.
We have Netflix, but it's not affecting.
Nobody's watching it.
Nothing is affecting the Egyptians. So no, the potential is huge.
Awesome.
I'd say it's not a virgin market, but it was a virgin market.
I think just the size of it. I think just the size and potential, like you say, the population it's unbelievable. 2 million new births means you're going to need property for these people eventually, you know.
Yeah, the outlook is that there would be sustainable growth for the next at least 10 years.
I'm going to get one last question in because I'm getting shouted at on the chat next to me. I'm getting told we're talking too much. One last question. I'm going to go to the standard question that we've been getting. Do you feel things will go back to normal? Do you feel once things do go back to normal, we will continue the new normal way of working? I think the point is, do you see this input of technology and virtual meetings, etc., staying in the community management? I mean, community management is a very much people industry, but I presume there needs to be some sort of development. So what do you guys think? Barbel, you go, or Johan. Johan, you go. You've not spoken for a while. On you go, Johan. Yeah. I know I meant to moderate, but on you go.
I think this COVID-19 was a reset. It's definitely not business as usual. I think it's going to be with us for a while, especially in South Africa, although we're going in our summer. You know, come winter time, we will probably go in some form of a lockdown again, I think. But I think it will change the way of doing business, especially this long in-person meetings will change to long Teams meetings or Zoom meetings. But I think the virtual meetings will become more of the norm than it was before. But the interesting fact I picked up in the Zoom meetings, you almost get more like the keyboard warriors, people who like to abuse people in meetings in Zoom when they switch off the video, you know, they hide behind that. But I think it's going to change. I think this on-site, be at office 24, not 24/7, but during working hours, I think that will change and continue to change going forward for the good, for the better. For me.
And I think it just gives everyone so much flexibility. No matter where you are in the world, we just need to be able to embrace it. We've been handed this opportunity. I mean, I take it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
That we have this technology, and so on. So we should embrace it. It shouldn't have to be one or the other. We can do a hybrid, whatever suits. But I mean, certainly, I for one intend to be able to use this technology to work virtually, to meet with committee members, and so on. So I found it really, really useful.
And I think there's two pieces to it for us. One is certainly the virtual meetings. I think those are here to stay. I think the board members are really enjoying it. I know the community managers absolutely love it. It's a little bit of a struggle with annual meetings with all the homeowners sometimes, but you know, we're working through those challenges as we go. And the other big impact, at least for us, is office space. I have probably 40,000 square feet of office space at all my offices, and I probably only need less than half of that now because so many people are able to work from home and virtually. So I certainly see the landscape changing for office space and how we utilize it. And our biggest challenge, as I said before, I believe moving forward is going to be how do we maintain and nurture the relationships with our employees and with our communities and our boards as we move forward into a more virtual world. I think that's probably our number one challenge moving forward.
Awesome. Any last words, Ishmael?
Well, as I told you, Egypt is different. But no one knows. Only God knows what would happen in the foreseeable future. Even with the vaccines, which are popping out every day, no one knows the effectiveness of them. As I told you, our lifestyle changed just for a while in Egypt, but we returned nearly to normal. Work returned nearly to normal. Maybe things like exporting and dealing with other countries were affected and will continue to be affected in the at least 2021. I think the flexibility of Zoom meetings and such tools, people, they got used to them and they're using them regardless of the COVID-19 pandemic. They would help us to reduce the traffic congestion catastrophe we have in Egypt and the pollution problem we have, especially in Cairo and the main cities. But I don't know how the COVID-19 would subside. No one knows. At least for me, I don't know what would be the scenario. But I think that 2021, we would still have COVID-19 with us. Concerning the economic side, I think we started to improve and everything returned nearly to normal. So I think 2021 won't be that negative for the economy. And concerning the lifestyle, of course, we don't change. We will never change. But we're starting the second wave. The second cycle is starting now. We're in the autumn. So the figures, the number of new cases every day, they're increasing, but I don't think it won't be like the US or Europe. Egypt is different,
cool.
And no one knows why. The figures are low. Thank goodness.
Just the way it is. Just the way life is. Guys, it's time to go. Thank you very much for all your time. Really thanks to John, who got up in the middle of the night to try and do this for us. I appreciate that, buddy. And yeah, thanks to everybody. Thanks for the conversation. Pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.